Hello everyone, Berserkhead here, and welcome to Should You Buy It, my series in which I take a look at the newest piece of DLC for Total War Attila and tell you whether if you should buy it or not. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Celts Culture Pack, which is the most recent culture pack for Total War Attila. So what does this DLC add to the game? As a culture pack, it adds 3 new factions to the game with their own unique faction traits, units, tech trees, skill trees, and so on and so forth. First of all, let's take a look at the cultural and faction traits. All those factions being part of the Celtic faction have the same cultural trait called Swift Spoils. It gives them minus 15% movement speed reduction in raiding stance, it gives them plus 200% raiding income in neutral and enemy territory, and it also gives them guerrilla deployment for all of their units. So as you can probably figure out, those factions are solely based on raiding. You have the Norsemen, which kinda have a similar faction trait that gives them bonuses to raiding, but these factions are even better than that. Also, their guerrilla deployment for all of their units is a very interesting cultural trait. In multiplayer, it could cause many problems. I've seen some videos where there are basically 2 of those factions fighting each other, so they use their guerrilla deployment and they basically spawn on top of each other. So that could be worked on and patched a little bit, but when it comes to the campaign, having the ability to deploy all of your troops as guerrilla troops is very useful. And when it comes to the faction traits, let's start by the Abdanians. Their faction trait is called Rack and Ruin, which gives them plus 75% income to sacking and looting, and they also get plus 200 income for every 10% damage caused to a settlement during a battle. So what does that mean for the Abdanians? They get such a massive bonus to raiding, sacking, and looting that it pretty much makes them the best raiding faction in the game. When it comes to the picks, their faction trait is called Children of the Night. It enables night battles on land and at sea, and it also gives them 9 morale during night battles. To be honest, I haven't played that many night battles in Total War Attila to tell you how useful that trait is, but it seems to be very interesting and it seems to encourage a different playstyle. Once again, I don't know how good and how useful this is, but it's certainly a very interesting trait. When it comes to the Caledonians, I'm actually not a huge fan of their faction trait. It's called Dancing Blades. They get minus 20% agent action cost, they get plus 25% success chance for all of their agent actions, and they get minus 30% recruitment cost for all sorts of agents. Now, I realized that CA wanted to make them kind of a agent based faction, but that's not the way to do it. First of all, agents don't fit with the whole raiding theme. I don't know what raiding and agents have to do with each other, so I think that these traits are kind of inappropriate for a faction like that. Plus, okay, let's say you want to make a faction that is very dependent on agents. I mean, agents in Total War Attila are like harder to recruit than they were in Rome 2, so they're more valuable, but that's not the best way to encourage people to use their agents. I mean, a better trait for that faction would be to either give them access to all agents from the start of the campaign, or just give them a free agent at the start of the campaign by their choosing, or something like that. I don't really know, but I think that those faction traits are kind of useless, and in my campaign as the Caledonians, I took very little advantage of them. When it comes to the other stuff added by this culture pack, there is a new narrative chain similar to the Lay of Ebor for the Longbeards culture pack. Again, you're gonna have to make different choices, and based on your choices, in the end you're gonna get a general who's gonna have different traits. In my case, I got a general called Olamri of Wisdom. He proved himself to be a great governor. When it comes to the units, there is a great variety of new units added by this culture pack. If you compare it to the Longbeards culture pack, there are a lot more new units. First of all those 3 factions have access to the standard Celtic unit roster, which is unique for them. And also each of them have their own unique units. The Abdanians have 8 units unique for their faction, the Caledonians have 7 units unique for their faction, and the Picts have 5 units unique for their faction. There are also 2 new building chains as well as a new building mechanic unique for those factions. The first building chain consists of 3 new farming buildings. The interesting thing about them is that they're not reliant on fertility. The other building chain gives them a lot of bonuses to raiding, but it also has a few penalties when it comes to public order and squalor. There are also 3 new tier 5 buildings unique for those factions, and the interesting thing about them is that not only you'll have to have unlocked a certain technology to build them, not only you'll have to have a certain amount of money to build them, but there will also be certain campaign objectives that you'll have to have accomplished in order to build those buildings. They give you great bonuses, but also the conditions to build those buildings are very tough. So having said all of that, should you buy this DLC? I actually thought about this a lot, and my final answer is yes. First of all, when they announced that DLC, I thought that it's gonna be a total garbage. Why did I think that? Well, once again, they announced those DLCs way too often, and there should be more amount of time between each piece of DLC released. Once again, I do not condone Sega's marketing practices and the way they release their DLC. However, I give it a yes because once again, it managed to surprise me and prove me wrong. Last night when I was playing that DLC in order to research it and make that video, I actually had so much fun that I played till like 2 o'clock. I was like, I gotta go to bed, but I want to play just a little bit more, just one more final battle. And that's what makes a DLC good. It was the same thing with the Longbeard's Culture Pack. They announced it too early. I thought that it was gonna be garbage, but they actually put effort into it and they made it very good. Same with this one. Again, it adds the same amount of content. Those factions again have a certain amount of charisma. I guess that they're a little bit more similar comparing them to the Longbeard's Culture Pack, but this culture pack has its own advantages over the Longbeard's Culture Pack. When it comes to multiplayer, I can't tell you how good those factions are. I really don't play multiplayer for Total War Attila because I think that it's got its own problems. I don't want to go into that topic yet, but when it comes to the campaign, those factions are absolutely great. And don't get me wrong, if you don't buy this DLC, you're still perfectly alright, you're not missing out too much. They released a free DLC, so if you happen to conquer that region, you're gonna have access to Celtic units, so they added what was missing from the game. You know, they're no longer like Nordic levy and stuff like that in the British provinces. If you enjoy raiding and if you're into the savage barbarian raiding factions, this DLC is for you. If you're not into that stuff, you're gonna be perfectly fine without purchasing this culture pack. Anyways, that's gonna be everything for this video, and I'll see you next time.